UFO Defence, better known as Xcom UFO Defence, or Xcom for short. Is there anything I can say about it that hasn't been said hundreds of times already? Maybe. Let's get into it. Xcom is a turn-based tactical RPG. Its big standout is the theme. Xcom UFO Defence takes a realistic look at the alien invasion scenario. You aren't Master Chief single-handedly killing all the aliens. You're a commander managing a multinational organisation that is humanity's last best hope for stopping the aliens. Before I continue, I want to clear a few things up. First, I've not recorded much of my own footage. OBS didn't work, and by the time I figured it out, I was late into the game, so I've taken footage from a tactical RPG YouTuber, link in the description. Second, Xcom is an old school game. It's complex, and it's got a reputation for being difficult. That's the triple whammy of criticism proofing. It's an old game, so if you don't like it, fanboys will accuse you of only caring about graphics. It's difficult, so if you don't like it, you're accused of being a scrub who wants the game to play itself with no challenge. And it's complicated, so if you don't like it, you're an idiot that needs games dumbed down so that you can just press a button to make explosion happen. Accusations like those are all over old school games, and UFO Defence is no exception. Ultimately, I think those kinds of people won't be swayed whatever I say. UFO Defence is their sacred cow, so any criticism of it, no matter how valid, will be dismissed. Third, this technically isn't my first time playing the game. I played it once years ago, before Steam even tracked playtime, so my guess would be I played it around 2010 or so. I only played it for about half an hour with my guys getting massacred as soon as they left the Sky Ranger on the first mission in true XCOM tradition. I didn't play it properly until recently, so if I mention this being my first time playing the game in the title or the thumbnail or whatever, now you know why. And the fourth and final thing I want to address, I'm using an open source port called OpenXCom. It has some quality of life features, not least of which is the option for a more zoomed out view and some minor UI changes. So if I complain about something that was different in the original release of the game, that's why. So with all that out of the way, let's start the review. The game is hit and miss graphically. There's a lot of care put into things like the snake men walking animations, the chrysalid bursting out of a zombie, the autopsy results, or the googly eyes on the power suits, but it's hard to square that with the stiff, sometimes unfinished look of, say, the Reapers or some of the more goofy looking art. The sound effects in XCOM are great. It's like a compilation of stock 90s sound effects that became somewhat iconic elsewhere. The plasma guns sound like the Far Sight in Perfect Dark. The menu beeps and boops were used in Resident Evil. I could go on. The game is full of this stuff and it's nostalgic in a way. The music though is forgettable. It does the job capturing the feel well enough, and it's not annoying for the most part, though it can get a bit repetitive on longer missions. I doubt this is on many people's MP3 players though. XCOM is somewhat famous for dashing your expectations early on. You can put your HQ anywhere on the planet and name your troops how you want. So my instinct was to have my XCOM base in my home country. This is a mistake, as you want your radar to cover as much land as possible. It's tradition to name your soldiers after your friends and favourite characters, just to watch in horror as they get melted by plasma guns or turned into a zombie by a chrysalid. It's great. Soldiers are notoriously inept, despite supposedly being the best the world has to offer. Though if they put me in charge of managing them, I guess the real best and brightest were liquidated on the first day of the invasion, and we're the best of whatever's left. The game is split into two parts: the tactical layer, where you manage your guys in combat, and the strategic layer, where you manage XCOM as a whole. I prefer the strategic layer myself, but let's start with the tactical layer. As you've no doubt seen, the tactical mode is a grid-based isometric game, based on line of sight and hit percentages, kind of. See, bullets are simulated and the percentage chance to hit is just a bad guess as to the actual accuracy. You can land 0% shots and miss 100% shots. The projectile-based simulation does mean that you can miss a target and hit something or someone behind them, or even choose to melt walls with plasma guns and come in behind the enemies. It also means your guys have a habit of shooting each other in the back, given even half the chance. I'm guessing most people have a story where 2/3 of their squad get wiped out by a fumbled grenade throw or stray rocket. Line of sight is another problem. It's not unusual to have aliens shooting from a window, but you can't return fire due to no line of fire. You also have cases of guys somehow failing to see an alien in an empty room or a hallway where you'd think they'd be able to. Actions in the game are governed by time units, TUs for short. Every action uses TUs, whether that's moving, shooting, reloading, picking up items. It all takes varying amounts of TUs. On the surface this makes sense. In practice it can lead to some strange situations. Grenades are a great example of this. You usually don't have the time units to remove the grenade from your belt, pull the pin and throw it. This means that it's sometimes better to take a grenade from your belt, pull the pin, drop it on the floor, step forward, have another guy pick it up and have him throw it. This can also lead to grenade hot potato, where the guy at the back throws a grenade to one guy who throws it to another guy who then throws it to the enemy. Or the even more bizarre, throw a grenade, miss, run over to the grenade, pick it up again and throw it again. There's also the related problem that nothing is automatic. Standing behind a fence doesn't mean your guy will take cover. You have to instruct him to crouch, which takes time units. Standing at a corner of a building doesn't provide much cover and your guys won't lean around it to shoot. They won't even turn their head without your say-so, and that costs time units. It all adds up to make the game slow and clunky. To take a pot shot from cover you have to order a move, right click to face, click the weapon, click the kind of shot you want, click the target, watch to see if the shot hits, then click back to where you were standing to move back to cover. Running out of TUs at a bad time is a death sentence, made worse by TUs being inconsistent. The UI will show a guy can reach a certain spot, but when I click he doesn't make it. I think him stopping when he spots an alien and me telling him to move again uses more TUs than if you just move straight to the target, but I'm not sure. The same goes for doors. I think what's going on is that the UI doesn't factor in TUs for opening doors. That, or it's not factoring in turning. Whatever the reason, it's annoying. There's even a reserve TUs button that supposedly is there to make sure you have enough to take a shot, but the few times I tried it I was told I didn't have the TUs to make the shot. Whatever the reason, it's annoying and one of the ways that the game lies to you. I could keep ranting about flaws in the tactical layer, from the randomized maps that don't make sense with shops facing away from the streets or seeing the same variation of farms over and over again, to the way enemies can shoot at you before you see them, meaning guys will get gunned down out of nowhere. So here's a quick fire round of complaints. Armour does little to improve survivability. Even with the best armour at the end of the game you can still get killed in 1 or 2 shots. Reaction shots only seem to work when they feel like it, and the ever popular open door and get your face melted by an alien standing on the other side is not uncommon. There doesn't seem to be an option to resist psionic attacks. I think they don't even need to be able to see you in order to use them. For the final mission I kept my explosive weapons unloaded so they couldn't blow my guys up with their own weapons. Night missions are a pain. Most, if not all, the enemies have better night vision than you, and there's no option to help you see in the dark aside from flares that are fiddly and tedious to use and seem inconsistent when you do use them. I'm no expert, but I think night vision goggles existed in the 1990s, and I know for a fact that torches existed, so we have access to cutting edge laser tech and air-to-air nuclear missiles, but we can't pop down Wilkinsons and pick up a mag light and some AA batteries. it's boring to spend tens of minutes scouring the map for that one last alien who's hiding somewhere, despite the battle being a foregone conclusion. I even had one case during a base invasion where I had no weapons for my guys, only drones that couldn't fit through any of the doors, so the enemies ran into small rooms and refused to leave. I didn't want to surrender and lose the base, so I used the debug option to cheat. Crossing the map searching for that last guy is made even worse by the energy system, which limits how much you can move over multiple turns. And that's assuming you're trying to get your guys to move fast. Most of the game you're inching forward a few squares at a time. Xcom fans call this playing defensively. I call it frustrating tedium. In either case, missions can involve up to 14 guys most of the time, more in the late game. It's a test of patience to shuffle these guys around. And for context, if a guy happens to have a seat close to the front of the dropship, it takes almost a full turn to get out of the dropship. Yet with all these complaints, buried beneath all the frustration and tedium is a game that is occasionally tense, engaging, and results in a few great moments, like the time an alien was hiding in a barn, so I used a rocket to just blast away the wall and opened fire on him. Or the guy hiding in a dead end with his gun trained on the door, so I melted the wall with plasma and came in behind him. Or that time one of my guys missed an alien and killed a civilian. Do these few great moments justify the pain to get them? I don't think so, though I can understand why some people do. The strategic layer fares better, though it has its own flaws. The goal here is to manage your operation, from building your base, intercepting UFOs, hiring soldiers, engineers and scientists, all while trying to keep within budget, pleasing governments of the world in order to keep the cash flow going. It's great fun. I almost want the whole game to be this, though the tactical battles are what give context to the strategic game. Without them, why would you research different guns, gadgets and armour? As said, your first instinct will be to build the base in your hometown or country, but in practical terms you want the radar to cover as much land as possible. You want fighter jets to shoot down the UFOs over land so that you can retrieve them. Plus, UFOs are probably going to be doing most of their stuff over land anyway. There's a lot of cool stuff in this mode, like the way aliens will attack your base if you cause them enough grief, and that also means you have to be careful about what you build and where. When you're invaded, it's fun to get an up-close view of your base and play around in it. Early on, each battle is hard fought, and you're desperate for money to build things you need, selling off valuable alien artifacts both to make ends meet and to make more room in your painfully small warehouses. Eventually you'll research better weapons and armour before reverse engineering the alien equipment. Unfortunately, the mid-game is where the balance of the game snaps like a twig with brittle bone disease. Early on you're struggling for money, with the world's governments paying about $1 or $2 million a month, but you also need to pay wages and maintenance. Once you research laser cannons, however, they sell for such good money that you can fund the development of extra bases, which in turn can be little more than glorified laser cannon factories. Eventually I had $28 million and nothing to spend it on. And I'm not sure who's buying all these laser cannons and why. I assume there's a laser cannon in every other house in the world by the time the game ends. It's not just money either, the game is full of balance problems. Heavy plasma guns are basically the best weapon in the game and are available in abundance for free from aliens. Interceptors can have various weapons, but only the starting avalanche missiles are worth bothering with until you research plasma cannons, at which point only the alien battleship will pose any threat at all. As said, the armour is mostly worthless. It makes your men harder to kill, but they could still be one-shotted out of the fog. By this point in the game, I was shooting down UFOs out of a sense of obligation. I didn't need the government's money. It was just pocket change to me. I didn't need alien artifacts. My warehouses were full. Trying to train up soldiers was a fool's errand, because even in the late game with the power suits, they were still susceptible to getting one shot out the fog, or driven insane by off-screen mind attacks, or opening a door and just catching shots to the face that way. I had built bases all over the world and was just waiting for research to complete and waiting for battleships to turn up in the hope that I could capture the right commander to unlock the endgame. As a general rule, if your game is not entertaining, if I have to force myself to play it, then it's failed. And if you're not having fun, then why bother? But for the sake of this review, I did finish the game, using the debug mode to skip most of the filler combat. I had heard the ending was way better in this game than the modern remake, and I don't really agree. The final mission involves you building the ultimate ship, flying to Mars and destroying the giant brain leading the aliens, but it's not as cool as that sounds. In practice, it's basically just another alien base mission, the likes of which you do a bunch over the course of the campaign anyway. There is a postscript that says man used alien tech to colonize Mars afterwards, and that's a slight improvement, I guess. If anything, it's the bad ending that's better than the game over in the remake, showing Earth ruined and the surviving remnants of mankind being mutated by radiation before being enslaved or wiped out. Before I get to my final conclusion, I want to address something I mentioned at the start of the video. The lie that forms a big part of Xcom's reputation, and that's the idea that the game is difficult. Early on, your men die a lot, and it's difficult to survive a mission, and you probably don't have much money to keep buying replacements. But once you have a bit of money in the bank, the economy breaks. The research is broken too. Things like alien autopsies don't give any mechanical benefit, just lore. It's interesting lore, but lore all the same. Once you know the tech tree and which items are useless, you could just focus on researching just the useful stuff. If aliens build a base somewhere within radar range, you can follow the regular supply ships and loot them when they land, basically getting all the alien supplies you need. Sure, men will die a lot, but that's mostly out of your hands, coming down to luck and patience more than skill, which describes the game as a whole, really. To put it bluntly, the game is only difficult at the start, which is probably when you won't know what you're doing anyway. So, do I recommend Xcom UFO Defence? It pains me to say this, but no. It's interesting as a piece of history, especially for fans of the genre, especially to see how things have changed in games that were inspired by it, the things that they changed and why, but it's too clunky, too random and too flawed to make it something I'd recommend people play for fun. Since Xcom UFO Defence there have been many imitators, remakes and spiritual sequels. The most famous is obviously the reboot Xcom Enemy Unknown, along with that game's expansion Enemy Within and its sequel Xcom 2. Then there's other games like Xenonauts, UFO Alien Invasion, the UFO After series, Phoenix Point, Rebel Star, Laser Squad and likely others that I don't know about. I've not played all of them or even most of them. I do have nostalgic memories of UFO Alien Invasion and UFO Afterlight, but I can't give an opinion on the rest. Out of the ones I have played, I think Xcom Enemy Unknown is your safest bet, though I recommend playing it on easy, especially if you're new to these kind of games. Xenonauts seems to be the most faithful modern take, but I've not played it so I can't say for sure. And one last thing, I know I've spent most of this video bashing the game, but I do appreciate the original Xcom UFO Defence. Even though I prefer the games that it inspired, those games might not exist if it wasn't for this original.